So, just to get everybody on the same page, there was a huge earthquake, but there's earthquakes all over the world. But this one was 9.0, and it was centered off Fukushima. Created a tsunami. The tsunami also went in and hit the Fukushima prefecture, where the nuclear power plant is, head on, with a lot of force behind it, and up to 70 feet in some areas. It inundated the nuclear power plant itself, and it wreaked carnage. It flowed freely around that site, and it wreaked more carnage. And there's no doubt that that entire site was inundated with water. And the people went in after, and you can see in the dry cast areas that the wreckage is in there, of course, because the wreckage in this areas is at a ferocious. You can't swim across something like that. That's flowing very strongly. You can see the background is actually higher, and this is the back of the reactor pumping house, and you can see that's destroyed from wreckage. Now, this is the 4 reactors. You can see 3 of them got their tops blown up, and so that was huge explosions. But there was 4 explosions right there. And there's about 1,000 different kinds of radioactive material that got released. 1,000 different types of isotopes got released. And you got a nuclear accident and a tsunami to clean up. The nuke stuff has to go into bags, particularly, but there's 30 million tons of nuclear waste in Fukushima alone. That's smoking, and is no good for anything, of course, and there's dead bodies among that. It's a never-ending disaster. And TEPCO, now the Japanese government themselves, had created a law where no one can scrutinize what they're saying or counter-say anything about it. So they even paid $12 million yen was being spent by the city because they were going to be burning that carnage that you see, the 30 million tons. Now, after this accident, they tried using helicopters, dipping it in the salt water, and that didn't work. There was a meltdown in reactor number 1 in 5 hours. Reactor 3 melted earlier than reported also. This was a explosion at the number 1 reactor. And reactor number 1's fuel rods were completely melted by May the 17th, 2001. This is another shot of that detonation for number 1 reactor. And that's what it looks like on the top of Unit 1. And you can actually see the detonation in this picture. On the roof of it, you can see its total carnage. And a little closer up shot for everybody. You can see the building is totally destroyed. Reactor 2 had cracked containment vessel that allowed the releases directly from the melted nuclear core. The radioactive plume was blown south at that time, they said, on that particular day. Now, because that was a meltdown, the radiation never stopped coming out of there. They say it went south. 1.6 billion becquerels of radioactive material was released from the number 2 reactor late Sunday. That's June the 20th, 2011. Now, radioactive material being uranium and plutonium, because that's what nuclear power plants run on. They don't run on cesium or bananas or iodine. They run on plutonium and uranium. Of course, this is Unit 2. You can see complete carnage. And TEPCO analysts had said that 94% of the nuclear fuel had melted in reactor number 3 on May the 26th. So that's 1, 2, and 3 so far. And here's a good shot of Unit 3. You will find a link under the video of these pictures. You can download them yourself from TEPCO's site. And this was a fireball from Unit 3. So once again, we're just making sure everybody's on the right page, because these were huge explosions, and on top of these buildings were storage pools of fuel rods, 1,535, and there's 80 rods in a bundle. That's 122,000 rods that are being atomized and aerosoled and spread all over that site, is what you need to keep in mind. This is Unit 3. You can see it blew its top. and this is max fuel. The max fuel is 2 million times more dangerous than any other reactor on the planet. And Chernobyl was 1/3 the size of these reactors, and you can do the math. It was a 30% meltdown also at Chernobyl. This was a 100% meltdown in this reactor again. We'll keep going. Unit 4 pool, according to the Fukushima 50, boiled dry, raising the specter of a nuclear fission chain reaction in number 4. So here's a picture of Unit 4. I don't know where the pools are, but it'll be hard to pick them out in that picture. Now, that picture, once again, you can download it from under my page from TEPCO's website itself. That's Unit 4. And the damaged fuel rods are cracked and leaking radioactive gases in Fukushima Unit 4. So there's probably a pool down there somewhere, and the wires appear trapped in the racks. And you can see the pictures that fit into that. You know, the pools are full. Each of those handles you see, there's 80 rods in a bundle that connects to that handle. And so those rods are like cigarettes in a cigarette pack. And if they're bent or twisted and you break them, they release gases, and that's how they blew up in the first place. Enormous amount of plutonium at number 4 spent fuel pool. That was April 13, 2011. And that, of course, you can see the building is destroyed. And you can see June 20th, 2012, Unit 4 had major impulse sound and damage to the roof on March the 14th. And once again, here's a good shot. You can see how much damage is there. It's through the whole building. It's a complete detonation, if not a nuclear explosion, obviously. This is not just earthquake damage. They said there was fires already at number 4, and that the rods had went dry. Now, BBC and CNN and everybody else came out with these pictures and these videos saying this was the inside of that building. Can you imagine that this is inside of that building, that reactor that had a nuclear detonation? And so they tried to sell number 4 for some reason. But there's an enormous amount of plutonium in number 4. And the pool is cracked and leaking. Now this is an interesting one because you can see it looks like there's a net. But if you zoom right in with the same pictures, you ended up with no net and a pool that's dry. You can see. This was the one they had up on the site. And that's the pool. They had extracted from the original one. I went in with the original one. Now look at this site here. Does that look anything like that pool? Does that look anything like that? So that net is not even real. Unit 4 caught on fire today. That was May the 4th, 2011. Once again, this is a zoom-in shot from TEPCO's site of Unit 4. You can see how much carnage is there. So it did blow up, right? It doesn't look like that on the inside, like BBC had tried to show us a few weeks back. It doesn't look like that on the inside like all the mainstream media tried to show us a few weeks back. And I don't think once you see this that you'll disagree. The cobalt-60 was at 1.4 billion becquerels a kilogram in the fuel pool. So it showed a chain reaction also went on. It was a nuclear explosion. The nuclear engineer says enormous amount of plutonium, number 4, spent fuel in danger catching fire. Japan Times. The walls are cracked below ground of Fukushima reactor buildings, as if the damage above the ground isn't enough. And you can see this signature, heat signature of the buildings, that there's, the buildings are in bad shape. This was from Japan's TV. Now, reactor number 5 and 6 were not in cold shutdown after the quake, which is what they're implying, a report by a UN nuclear industry. And cooling at the spent fuel pool number 5 stopped until the cables were installed. So there was definitely trouble there. And that's the buildings, 5 and 6, in front of you. And there was enough cesium found near the drainage gates at reactor number 5 they couldn't get near it. The level was just too high, 2,300 times what they consider even reasonable. This is the pump houses out in front of number 5 reactor. And this is the pump house in front of number 6 reactor. And the cesium rises by 5 and 6, discharge at the highest level in months. And so that was on September the 23rd, 2012. Still having huge issues from all the radioactivity all around them. You can never work in that reactor 5 and 6 again. This was damage out in front of it, to the left of it, and to the right of it, or left and right. And you can see in this shot here how much damage from the tsunami came along. The pump houses were taken out right away. I should have mentioned earlier, but the cooling systems at number 5 stopped working on Wednesday afternoon. That was come out March the 23rd. Now, you can see the water inside of buildings 5 and 6, and it didn't, in the pictures that are below, you can download them yourself, it shows these pictures as 5 and 6. We don't know what's what, 100%. But we do know that 4 of the 5 emergency diesel generators on Unit 5 and 6 were inoperable after the tsunami, and they only had 1 air-cooled emergency diesel generator on Unit 6 continued to function and supplied electrical power to Unit 6 and later to Unit 5. Now, how would you ever see these generators? They're massive. There's radiation everywhere. There's carnage. People don't even know if their families got swept away. And so I find that story hard to believe. Unit 5 has been shut down and is in an outage since January the 3rd, 2001. But apparently they weren't in a cold shutdown. There's conflicting stories about that. And the fuel had been loaded into the reactor. This was August 14, 2010. But let's keep going here. That the buildings have water in them. So these buildings are no longer functional. You can't just restart up. Like you hear the media talking about they're going to restart 5 and 6. They couldn't do it. They can't work in there, see, because it's all radiated water. And TEPCO used radioactive water from reactors 5 and 6 to spray through Fukushima plant, over 100 tons a day. This was really highly radioactive water. And it's all through the plants in 5 and 6. So they were never going to get that open again. I don't know why the media reported that they were talking about it. The walls are cracked below the ground at the Fukushima reactor buildings. Right? The buildings are destroyed in many different ways, but not just from all this mad water that's in the building. That's radioactive. It's insane. So all the pipes, even if they do pump the water, everything inside is radioactive. Right? Do you get it? Because radioactive works that way, where you can actually infect metal with radioactive properties, and they become radioactive themselves. But Fukushima reactor number 5 and 6 are now in crisis. It was October 24, 2011, and cesium outside was up 100%. So it was like I'm saying all along here, I'm trying to show you to make you understand that 5 and 6 also are in desperate heart attack modes. And they got all that radiation all around them from all those explosions you watched early. They got all that water all through the buildings. You know, you can download the video or the pictures yourself from the link on below. I wanted to touch on this one, that if number 4 collapses, Japan will be evacuated. And there's a better shot of that same picture. That's number 4. Now remember, they showed us that on BBC recently and said, look at it, how nice it is and everything else in there. Just the complete opposite, obviously. But Japan was considered moving their capital away from Tokyo. Think about that one. And I want you to think about cesium-137 is code word for plutonium and uranium, because that's what nuclear reactors, and they got a shelf life. Uranium is 4.5 billion years, 234 and 235, and 238, which is the byproduct, the weaponized, what we call yellow cake a lot of the times, but it's actually used for bullets. It's uranium-238. And so that gives off alpha, beta, gammas that are changed and completely different than uranium ever was before, because it went through a chain reaction. So here's the forecast. You can see yourself. This is France's Institute for Radiological Protection and Nuclear Safety, March 19, 2011. You can watch that and make up your own mind about the particles. But we got a lot more than that. Fukushima problems are causing concern in the U.S. as the radiation crosses the Pacific. And of course the EPA said no comment. Of course they grandfathered in 65,000 chemicals in 1981 when they hung their shingle out, so what do you expect? Rain out of hot particles from radioactive clouds to continue for another year, see? But actually it goes up into the atmosphere, up into the ionosphere and the stratosphere, and it stays up there for years, and it keeps raining out as it falls back down. But the U.S. government model of the Fukushima cesium-137 particles covering the northern hemisphere is really something else. And so this starts, and there's a date on it for each movement of the Earth. And you can count away at it. It's pretty fascinating. This is about 40-day projection. And so after 40 days, it stops. But you can be sure the radiation didn't, right? So here's some other models with a 180-hour forecast, because of the jet streams, even at 100 miles an hour, will land on your coastline in 72 hours, because that's 2,400 miles per day at 100 miles an hour into the jet streams. That's why you see these models. They're well-known models. And North America received an incredible amount of fallout. This one here was a bit of a controversy also, and because it shows, this one is the correct route. This one shows 36 hours. It reaches the coastline of Canada and the United States. And so you got a pretty good jet stream that month. So this was a study that used tracers emitted from Fukushima Daiichi's nuclear power plant. Scientists, average person in Seattle, breathed in 10 hot radioactive particles a day during April. June 5th, 2001. Now, when Japan released the first of their fire balloons that they sent over with bombs attached to them on November 3rd, 1944, they were found in Alaska, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Idaho, Montana. In other words, that's where the plumes will land too. Top U.S. official raised the possibility of a widespread nuclear fallout March the 18th. March the 16th, 5 days after. And once again, you can see the modeling of the plumes coming in the ocean. It's quite hideous. No matter which angle you come at it from, these models, even NOAA, shows that the plumes are much faster than anybody was led to believe, much more potent than anybody can conceive inside of a lot of these studies that were hid away. Fukushima ocean plume hit Canada 6 months ago. Now, because the rain picks it up and brings it here quicker, the thousands of miles of clouds on the ocean every day can get it over here a lot faster. It can be thrown into the jet stream and then falls out as it's coming here, so you start seeing it showing up. But as the ocean becomes, because it doesn't stop hemorrhaging into the ocean. Now, uranium-234 was detected in Hawaii, Southern California, and Seattle, April the 9th, 2011. April the 15th, it showed the April 16th forecast, radioactive clouds stretching from Texas to Canada. Washington Post says it's a total disaster. The ocean is polluted, and up to 3,000 miles offshore, kilometers rather, is probably going to be polluted too. And of course, that's because the plume is heading over here. And the models are all out there. It's just the media won't show it to you. Boing Boing's not going to show it to you. Deep Sea News not going to show it to you. Banana Head out there with 76 million bananas worth of radiation coming into the ocean, not going to show it to you. But look at this article here, August the 16th, 2011. 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per cubic meter of air in California. And so California gets a lot of us, is what you got to realize. It loads up in California for some reason. But it goes all over, like the model showed you earlier. It goes all over the place. But California really sucks it up, apparently. And so you can't get away from that. Just walk out and walk through 1 cubic meter of air, and you're breathing in these hot radioactive particles. These are known as buckyballs. And there's a link below about that, and how there's little nuclear engines because they sprayed salt water. And that's what they mean by radioactive sulfur. It's an extraordinary, unbelievable event on this planet. This is a absolutely, completely life-changing event because everybody getting a dose. You can't avoid it. If you went out your door, you breathe air, your children are walking to school, the police are giving you tickets, your governments that are working, walking to work or getting into their cars, they got to walk through a whole lot of cubic meters of air, and so they're breathing all these buckyballs in. And their children are breathing it in while they're walking to school and playing in the schoolyards. And so everybody, instead of being told and warned about it, they made it into a national secret and they kept the silence. August the 17th, 360 plus atoms of radioactive sulfur per day may have been hailed by the Californians, which is nothing, 360 atoms, when there's a 1,500 in a cubic meter. But whatever. Hot particles bombarded the west coast of U.S. and Canada and contaminated farms and food. And there's radioactive debris island, twice the size of Texas, crossing the Pacific, December 27, 2011. 120 billion becquerels of plutonium, 76 trillion becquerels of neptunium, first released in the first 100 hours, October the 15th, 2001. That finally came out. And so those plumes came across the ocean, no one got a chance to know. Again, because they made it a national secret. They told their own families that day, don't be out. But they never told you. And, of course, nobody knows how many people have killed themselves from Fukushima. I know there was one man got interviewed and had watched his wife burn up on TV because she was an evacuee and couldn't deal with it. And just couldn't deal with it. And a top Japanese official was found hanging, had been the Deputy Minister for Disaster Reconstruction. And who knows what that was all about. He's the guy who gives out the contracts. And we have a peer-reviewed study based upon a 2-week release from Fukushima only. That tells the whole story, but it's only based upon cesium-137. And the reactors run on uranium and plutonium. Uranium-234, 235, and plutonium-239. And they have a very, very long half-life. And whatever a half-life is, you should always multiply it by 10. So if cesium's 30 years, it's 300 years. Take care, folks. See you tomorrow.